Call this meeting to order. And I have a new roll call list without all of my cross-offs and write-ins. It's all in alphabetical order. It's going to be very easy. Michael Anderson. He's not here. Einan Lynch. Here. Frazier.
Present.
Gade. Here. Grimm.
Here.
Harrelson.
Here.
Murray. Here. Shetty. Here. Stillman. Smith.
Here.
Sturdivant.
Here.
All right. And staff, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sarah Gardner.
Daniel Bissell.
Megan Hill.
Great. Next, we will approve the minutes from December 4th, 2023. Are there any comments or amendments needed? If none, is there a motion to approve?
I so move. Frazier.
Gade, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? All right, great. Minutes approved. Next is public comment for items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the commission? All right. Let's move on to announcements.
All right, as promised, we want to welcome two new members to the Climate Action Commission, one of whom unfortunately couldn't be here today, though those of you who were here in February had a chance to meet Michael Anderson. We thought it'd be a good idea to let Zach introduce himself and then do a quick round of introductions around the room so that everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, great. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Zach Harrelson. I work at Collins Aerospace. I did my PhD in physics here at the University of Iowa back in 2017, and from there I've kind of bounced around. I worked for a while on a fusion energy project and kind of considered that my climate action for a while, but then moved back to the Midwest, and so was very excited to find new ways to contribute on climate action. And so in 2022, I did the Climate Ambassador Program, started learning more about what the city is doing, and just got kind of amped up, excited about all the stuff that's going on here, and just wanted to continue contributing. So excited to be here.
Notably, Zach has taken a tour. We offered tours last year for climate ambassadors, and he's been to our transit facility. So I think he more than most can be excited with us that we're going to be building a new facility because he has seen all the ways the other one is sinking.
Absolutely, yeah. And the water treatment plant, and I'm always excited for more of that kind of stuff too, if there's opportunities.
We just go around. Want to start?
Sure. My name's Angie Smith. I've been on the commission since like October or something, so I'm still a relatively new member. I've lived in Iowa City for like 23 years or something like that, but I grew up in Iowa. I am a bike enthusiast. I am officially one of the 2024 bike ambassadors. So Iowa City has a bike ambassador program. And so I really think a lot about how transportation carbon emissions could be offset by some active transportation modes. So that's probably the thing I'm most passionate about, but climate overall, yeah.
Hi, Zach. Welcome. I'm Brenda Shetty, and I'm a program manager at the Office of Sustainability and the Environment on campus here at the University of Iowa. And I'm serving as a representative of the university. But I've been in Iowa City for about 10 years now. And, of course, very interested in climate and all the action that's happening here.
Hi, I'm John Frazier. I'm not sure I'm smart enough to talk to you. Welcome you. I'm retired from the Navy, retired from Amana Refrigeration, retired from the University of Iowa, and now I'm just tired. Am I the only one left from the committee?
From the original committee, yes.
Before we became a commission, because I believe so strongly in this, but I'm also the oldest guy, not only in the room, but maybe in the county. So I I want to do as much as I can, but I don't want to take a spot from somebody smart like you, so I don't know how long I'll cling to this, but we're really glad to have somebody with your background on the commission. Thank you.
So I'm Ben Grimm. I work for the school district. I'm the sustainability representative for the operations side of things, but I'm a horticulturist by trade. So that's kind of where my expertise is. I think this has started my second term on this committee, and so yeah, that's about it.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Jamie Gade, and I'm public health systems analyst at Johnson County Public Health. But I've been in the county, since I graduated college here. But yeah, excited to have you on. I don't really know what else I want to tell you, but.
Hi, welcome. I'm Wim Murray. I'm the Mid-American Energy representative, and I've been at Mid-American Energy 10 years, but I've been in Iowa City for 20 plus. I can't really count how many years. I went to school here, and really excited to have you here. Maybe pick your brain about fusion energy a bit.
For sure.
Teach us all you know.
I'm Michael Einen Lynch, currently the chair, but we'll be electing new chair and vice chair today. And I founded a nonprofit called Resilient Sustainable Future for Iowa City. We work on building long-term community resilience, specifically here. And another one, I started a group with Brenda called Transition Towns Iowa City, and we've started the repair cafes that work on repairing broken things with volunteers.
I'm Gabe Sturdivant. I self-employed photographer, videographer, and I'm going back to school for my master's in fall, so in sustainable development. So
Nice to meet everyone.
We're just so glad to have you all on the commission. Thank you for your time and talent. Next up, we have our annual commission bylaws reminder. At the beginning of the year, when we bring on new members, the last few years, we've started getting in the habit of just running through highlights of the bylaws as a reminder of why we're all here together. And it's been a useful reminder, I think, even for returning members, just to recenter ourselves on the mission. So, Michael, you have that, and we'll hand it over to you.
Yes. I will not read you this whole thing, but just do a brief reminder of some of the most important things of our bylaws. First of all, our main purpose is to enhance and enable further community efforts to achieve the city's ambitious climate goals. Our main duties are to advise the City Council on climate issues, research, analyze, and promote climate actions with particular attention to equity, educate and engage with the public on climate action and the city's climate and sustainability goals, assist city staff, city council, and members of the community with implementing approved initiatives that support the city's climate and sustainability goals, including all of the plan activities, and recommend to the city council updates to the climate action and adaptation plan. The rest of the bylaws deal with rules around having a chair and vice chair, which is basically that we do this at the beginning of the year every year. How to deal with absences. So if any member who misses 3 meetings in a row without prior approval or excused absence, the commission must recommend the city council discharge that member. So if you're going to miss a meeting, please get approval from Sarah Gardner. Discusses quorum. Basically, 6 or more members make a quorum. Voting is done by simple majority. And then there's a long bit about how to make recommendations to council. First of all, the council receives all of our minutes in their packets, so they're up to date on anything that goes in our minutes, but we can write longer memos if there is something particular we want them to know or consider. Cover it?
Yeah, and I don't think this is an issue now that we no longer have hybrid meetings, but just a reminder that quorum is 6 people physically present. And this question has come up just on some of the requests for absences recently. If you are late to a meeting, that's totally fine. So long as we have quorum, you just get folded in seamlessly. If for some reason we only had 6 people in the room and somebody had to leave early, at that point we would no longer have quorum, so we would have to end the meeting. So leaving early, weirdly, is a bigger issue than arriving late, though hopefully you'll all be here for the full 90 minutes and You'll be like, why did Sarah even mention that back in February? Cool. Next up on the agenda, we have just 2 reminders that have come to us, actually from our legal office, one of which I believe you may have all received a memo emailed to you just about signature blocks. And of course, that is just, it's really an issue of making sure people aren't inadvertently or on purpose abusing the position that you all are in, implying in some way that, you speak on behalf of the commission, and so this person better give you a discount on that used Nissan Leaf or what have you. The other is a reminder that didn't merit a memo, but I was just asked to remind everyone to make good use of the microphones, that whenever you speak, to lean into them. That is so that folks who listen to the recordings of the meeting afterward can hear everything that everybody said. You all do great at that, so not a big deal.
Maybe along with that, a reminder for the minutes to say your last name before you begin talking so that Diane can better record who said what.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you. And then action items for the last meeting. We talked about having a representative of an industrial entity attend a future meeting. We are in contact with 2 folks from P&G, Procter & Gamble, who are going to come to a future meeting. We're just trying to get schedules aligned to work out a date, but you can look forward to that presentation in the future. And then you all were supposed to muse upon who you might like to elect or nominate to be chair and vice chair for this coming year. So hopefully you all have given that a little thought. And we purposely put that at the end of the agenda so that our new members have a chance to at least hear commission members talk through a full meeting, so you feel like you're casting a meaningful vote and not just, yeah, sure, that dude. So, cool. The next item is just really an update to the commission. At our last meeting in December, we discussed a new program that the city was rolling out, our whole home electrification program. No sooner was that memo inked than we received a phone call from the Mayor's Innovation Project, who had been reading about it. They got wind of it from Rewiring America, and the 2 organizations together offered to fly a representative of the city out to the Conference of Mayors to talk about the program. So I actually went out to DC a few weeks ago and took along slides and information about that program and was able to talk about it, which on the one hand, it's a little weird to talk about a program that you are just now rolling out and can't actually point to a house that has successfully adopted it. On the other hand, what an amazing opportunity to encourage other communities to consider doing the same. So I know that in our last meeting we talked about one of the goals for Iowa City's Climate Action Plan is to serve as an example for other communities, and we said that we hoped this might be an opportunity to do that, and boy, did we not know how quickly that would arise. So thank you again for your support of such an innovative program from us and other communities. And then we're just going to touch lightly on the Urban Heat Island map report that was included in your agenda packet. You all heard many updates throughout last year about how we recruited volunteers to go out and collect the data points. Do we remember off the top of our heads how many data points were collected?
I do not. Do you?
No.
I remember it being in the tens of thousands. Like every volunteer on every route took, basically a measurement a second for the entire hour they were out. And Kappa Strategies, which was the organization charged with analyzing those results, returned to us this report at just in the beginning of January, correct? Yeah, so we wanted to include it into the packet so that both you and City Council could see the final report and the final recommendations. We've taken the map data that they provided us and have created a little map in-house that now will be up on our Keep Cool Iowa City webpage under the Climate Action webpage, so others can access that information. And actually, just last week, I was contacted by a community member who was aware of that program and was thinking, had been thinking a lot about ways that they could help support the city's efforts around climate action, or around addressing heat island, and had questions about applying for a climate action grant. So that data is already out in the community and being used by our very thoughtful residents and thinking about ways of engaging the solutions. So that's really great. I did want to pause and see if anybody had any questions, having glanced through the report before moving on.
This is Sturdivant. I didn't have any questions. I just thought they did an amazing job. I've seen their other reports, and it's online with what they did in like Los Angeles and stuff. So if you have time, definitely read through it. It's well worth the 20 minutes it takes to read through it. But that's my recommendation.
This is Einan Lynch. Was there, I don't know if I just like read it wrong. It seemed like at the end it said next steps, and then there was like, said there was a plan. You could get a plan of action. Do we have a plan of action, or that's like a further thing we could do with them?
That's a further thing we could do with them. We could line up some funding for it. In our office, we sort of felt like we had a bit of an action plan for how to address it and didn't necessarily need to contract out for it, although we do remain in communications with Kappa Strategies. There's a couple other offerings they have that are of potential interest for us. So we may work with them again in the future. We'll see. But I will say one of the things we're doing to follow up with that, I think one of our big takeaways is just how much interest there is in this kind of data collection as a way of assisting with our climate action strategies. And we've remained in communication with the NOAA office, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration office that supported this effort with us. And Megan actually is in the process now of putting together a second training this summer that won't be looking at heat data, but actually will be providing training for residents to be engaged with precipitation data gathering. And unlike Spot the Hot, which was a one-day intensive event, the precipitation training will be about collecting precipitation data daily over the course for the foreseeable future, which of course is very helpful. So it's a related effort, I'd say.
Just to follow up on, when you say we already had a plan, do you mean like the climate action plan already kind of addresses the heat, hot areas, or do you mean we had like a more specific plan for addressing heat islands?
So we do have provisions in the climate action plan, particularly in the adaptation section, that think about urban heat islands without, doesn't always use that term, but there are provisions in there talking about it, particularly our tree-related efforts, but also internally. The Climate Action Division has plans for the coming year about, we built out the Keep Cool Iowa City webpage as an addition to the city's website. It includes information about where to find cooling centers and high heat awareness activities. Megan did a great job last year of developing educational packets that could be distributed at the library and other events for kids' activities to begin engaging with the work. We also have continued to remain in contact with Johnson County Public Health about their efforts. And the biggest thing is that we're folding it in to our Resilience Hub efforts. So both within the plan and then sort of shorter term planning within our office, we've got ideas about how to use that. But certainly if you all have other suggestions, we're very open to that.
This is Smith. I was just wondering if you were surprised by any of the data?
I can't say that we were. I mean, it's not the first data effort we've done in terms of mapping the heat islands. Part of the motivation to do this campaign was twofold. One was to look at the after effects of the derecho and see if anything had significantly changed. We didn't see any significant changes necessarily. The other part of it was, and I think this was actually the more important part of it, is as a community engagement tool, right? Like, it's one thing for us in this room to know what heat islands are, how to identify them, why they might be a problem in the community. it's a very different thing for community members to know about it and to be engaged in talking to their neighbors about it. And actually, I think on that level, it was hugely successful. We still have folks reaching out to ask us about the heat islands and other ways they can be involved and thinking about what it means for their neighborhood. And this gentleman who called, thinking about the climate action grant, those are conversations that we did not see happening with our office previously. And it just, I think, drives home like the ways that data can be really powerful when you yourself have had a hand in gathering it, or you've been part, you know a neighbor who has, that somehow reads differently than data that just sort of comes from a federal agency that you may or may not know what the acronym stands for elsewhere, right? Because at the end of the day, heat islands aren't rocket science. Like where you don't have a lot of trees and you have a lot of concrete, you're going to have more heat islands, right? But in terms of engaging folks with that knowledge and what are the strategies to address it, I think it's been a very successful campaign. And I really want to say, huge credit on this one goes to Danny and Megan on this effort. Danny did a lot of work to help secure the grant, and Megan did a lot of work to organize the volunteers. And that is a tricky volunteer organization event because we didn't know until just a few days beforehand when we were going to be able to go out and take the data, right? It was weather dependent. And so to be able to organize enough volunteers to make sure you have coverage on a moment's notice and that the people who aren't picked still like you, that's a tough task. I mean, I think it's a real credit to the team we have here and their efforts. And I was on vacation when it happened, so I can take no credit at all.
So we don't do enough of this. Congratulations. Thank you very much. You're behind the scenes and you're working your tails off, and we appreciate that.
I have one more question. This is Ida Lynch again. Do you think there are opportunities with this data to engage, builders in thinking, as we develop portions of the city or redevelop portions of the city, to engage them in thinking about how they build or what landscaping they do or how they might minimize concrete, open piles of concrete to minimize the heat islands? Is there either engagement work or are there things we can look to in the future around different regulations or zoning codes?
I think one of the ways it will be really beneficial in terms of timing is, we're getting ready to do the comprehensive plan update. And I think having the data in the hands of our planning staff is useful. In terms of engaging specific builders, I'm sure there is. I don't know exactly what that is. Probably it flows more from zoning than it does from someone seeing the data and having a conversion of their heart. But yeah.
Like the way we construct parking lots or,
Yeah.
This is Sturtevant. Going off that, since we were reaching out to builders for, insulation and all these things, is this heat island mapping something we could put in with a packet we give, information we give out to them saying, hey, these spots don't have many trees, try not to cut them down when you're, building your new property or something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that something that can be distributed, or is it just the heat island map's the heat island map and that's its own separate thing?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we can always share information, always. Yeah, I think we just have to think about how to do it effectively.
This is Gade. Sorry, I have a question. For most of the concentrated areas, it seems obviously downtown, but for city-owned lands, is it a thought of when redoing the comprehensive plan to look at this too, to see current areas that we could plant more trees or create more of a tree canopy in those areas?
You know what this is all telling me is we need to bring in Tyler Baird to talk about the city's tree planting strategy, because I think he's going to give you more satisfying and detailed answers than I can. I do know that our forestry department does think about it a lot when they target areas the things go hand in hand, right? Like when they target areas for tree planting, they're thinking about areas where the canopy is a little thinner, right? And where the canopy is a little thinner is where we see the heat islands. So, and I know that one of the things they're thinking about in targeting those areas is reducing the heat stress for the residents in that area and for the infrastructure there. So it's a long-winded way of saying yes, but certainly we can get a more detailed response if you all would be interested in having the city forester come in and talk to us. Yeah, all right, I'll add it to the to-dos. Tyler Baird is one of the nicest human beings on this earth and certainly in city administration, so you will enjoy hearing from him. He has something like 60 cat statues in his office and many, many potted plants, so.
And this is Fraser. I'm sure you're all aware that during the heavy snow, we lost a lot of evergreens. We didn't lose deciduous trees, but I have a lot of trees in my yard, way more than I should, and I lost 6 of them that were upwards of 30 years old. And I feel badly I wasn't there to bang the snow off, but I understand it snowed so hard I might not have been able to save them anyway. There was so much weight in the top, they toppled over and knocked over trees next to them. And I think that happened a lot in Iowa City. So the timing might be really good to have a tree match program or something to fit in with the island concept. We donate a tree if somebody puts in a tree or some silly thing that might make greener. And I don't know the value of deciduous trees versus evergreens relative to what our goals are. But I think either one of them are a winner.
Yeah, I think Tyler would say our key goal is to diversify our tree canopy, right? And actually, he and I were talking about that event recently, and he referred to it as a mini derecho in terms of its impacts on the city. So there were quite a few trees lost. But we'll invite him in. That'll be a fun discussion.
Move on to upcoming events.
Yes, upcoming events. The first event is being organized by our AmeriCorps team. They're hosting a forum that looks at sustainability in local government, and they have a variety of speakers who are going to be participating in that, including Megan and also Becky Soglin from Johnson County, who some of you may know from her time on the Climate Action Commission. So if anyone has any interest in attending that event, please feel free to reach out to Megan, who can get you more details from our AmeriCorps team. And then we are launching, you may have seen the call go out for our next Climate Ambassador training. We're actually retooling the training. We're excited about this. Like, the long-term vision has always been to try to have the trainings in person rather than on Zoom, and to incorporate more field trips into it instead of after the fact, as poor Zach had to come back after completing the training to take those tours. So there's some really, I think, interesting things afoot with that. If you know people who would be interested in participating in the training, we at this point have had several commission members recently appointed who went through the training first, and that's how they first became involved. So it's a nice way of replenishing your ranks as well as getting the word out about what we're doing with climate action. So if you know anyone, please encourage them to apply. And Gabe and John, I know you've both been through that training. Do you have anything to add about it, or any words of encouragement to help inspire folks to get their friends to sign up?
It's just really enlightening, and as a member of the commission, it really gave me a lot of background and knowledge that I didn't have. So I felt really empowered learning more, and developed a habit of wanting to learn even more. I think that's the key, is once you immerse yourself in this type of training, you're open to more of the same.
This is third event for me. Going through it kind of showed what the city's working on behind the scenes that you don't see. You hear all this stuff, and then it's like, oh, there's a packet, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a packet, and it ends up being, what is it, like 200 pages or something like that. So you get to see a lot more of hey, here's why we're doing it, here's what our future goals are. So if you're interested, it's definitely worth it.
And certainly, if any of you are interested in taking it and you haven't before, you're very welcome to apply as well. We can't promise we will grease the wheels to get you a priority placement, but one of the nice things about having it in person is I think we're going to be able to accommodate a few more people than we have in the past, so that's really nice. Anything to add, Megan?
I guess other than the application's live now on the website, and it will close February 18th. So.
All right. Unfinished and ongoing business?
I'm going to turn the floor over to Danny for this next one. Our climate action grants, we are making some updates to that program. We took the opportunity to look over how it's been performing over the last few years and have made some tweaks that we think are going to add some clarity to the process and also, I think, better align the grants with where we'd like to see them going and other funding opportunities that we have. So Danny's going to talk to you a bit about that, and then fair warning, at the end of it, he's going to make a pitch for 2 members to sign on as volunteers to help with the review committee on that. So if for some reason you don't feel like nominating yourself to be chair or vice chair today, a way you could make it up to us would be to serve on this committee. All right, Danny.
All right. Since we have some new members with us, I'll just briefly go over what climate action grants are. So community climate action grants are offered to businesses and nonprofit organizations in amounts up to $10,000 for a project which can be completed in the course of 1 year, which align with the climate action and adaptation plan. So these would be projects which either increase energy efficiency, encourage low or no emissions transportation, minimize waste and or consumption of valuable resources, or support and promote sustainable activities and connections, or promote preparedness and resilience. So as you saw in your packet, there's been a few updates this year to the grants. So starting this year, we're only going to support the purchase of equipment, supplies, or physical goods. Funds will not be available for programmatic costs or activities or events. We think this will this focus on physical purchases will simplify the scoring of grant applications and the verification of how the funds are spent, and more easily assign an emissions reduction to those projects. In the past, we've asked applicants to estimate the greenhouse gas reductions of their projects. Going forward, climate action staff will calculate those reductions for them and include those calculations in the scoring committee for that review. That'll make it easier for the applicants and, again, make it more verifiable that we're actually putting forward projects that reduce emissions. New for this year, organizations that are awarded funding will now be required to present a brief update on the progress of the project about halfway through to this commission. In the past, they have provided a written update, but presenting to this commission will offer more transparency and just help reduce paperwork burden on their end and tracking that paperwork on our end. Finally, if a project is not able to be completed as described on the application, the organization is going to forfeit that grant for that current funding period. But they can be free to apply the following year without any penalty. In the past, there's been some projects which the organization ran into some difficulty, and they would work with climate action staff to retool or in some cases, completely redesign their project on the fly. That's added a lot of extra work and stress on our part and on the organization that was awarded the grant. So we feel that it'll just make things go a lot more smoothly and keep these projects moving forward rather than chasing potential projects as the grant cycle is ongoing. So does anybody have any questions about those changes?
This is Sturdivant. Pardon me. So when, like, if they're not able to complete it as, say, is there like a supply issue thing there? It's like, okay, well, lumber tripled. Is there any leeway in that, or is it, if they can't do it how they said they were going to do it, it's done for that time?
In that case, there might be some sort of leeway, but like we've seen in the past, especially with solar projects that we funded, they ran into supply chain issues and weren't able to complete that project until the year after. So it might even make more sense to have them reapply the next year when those supplies are available.
Part of it is a fairness question. They're applying for a particular project against other projects, and if those other projects aren't selected, right, but then this organization gets to change their project, it's really not fair to the other organizations that didn't get the grant, right? And what this allows us to do is make it very clear, as it always should have been, that you're getting an award for a project, not an endorsement of you as an organization. Like, here's a blank check, go have fun, right? There's a specific thing that you're being scored on against other specific things that are also getting scored on, and that's what gets the funding. But in an instance like that, where they do run up against it, and it's worth noting that although we say they have a year to spend the funds, they apply in March, they find out in April that they've got approval. They can't start the project until July, and then they have until the following June. So in reality, they have something like 14 or 15 months to get all their ducks in a row and get the project completed. And if they can't do it in that time and they forfeit under this system, they'll be able to apply without penalty the following year, right? So put the same project up, which hopefully would compete just as well in the future. But in the meantime, you're not disadvantaging any other organization that has also applied.
This is Harrelson. I was wondering, are we reimbursing on actual costs then, or is this an upfront grant for their projected costs, or how does that work?
It's a reimbursement grant.
Okay. And they have to show actual costs
Right.
and things like that.
Yeah.
And then is there any consideration of matching funds or cost sharing or anything like that? Have we ever looked at that?
It is part of the application. I don't know. Historically, it really hasn't been weighted in the scoring rubric.
We don't require it. Part of the vision behind these grants is it's sort of grants for beginners, and the idea is that you get this grant and you sort of understand how the grant process works, and then now you're in a position to apply for bigger grants from the city in other departments, right, that may look for an in-kind donation. So we encourage folks to think about it, and it does get taken into consideration when the applications are reviewed, but it's not a requirement. And partly that's because we do want to lower the bar as much as we can for organizations who might be first-time grant applicants to participate.
This is Shetty. Are you going to do emissions calculations through the EPA portfolio manager, or are you using something else for the project?
I think it's going to depend on a case-by-case based on what kind of project it is, buildings versus transportation.
Sure. Maybe some of them could be recruited for the energy benchmarking, too.
Yeah.
We're requiring that now of all the folks who go through the TIF program, so yeah, that's a great idea. And part of the vision there, too, is, in the past, we've had folks do their own calculations, and we like it when they show us the math, but we don't always know how they're doing it. We don't know if they're comparing apples to oranges when they're comparing against other organizations. So part of what we're doing here is relieving them of the burden, but this is another move toward consistency to make sure that we've got a really fair process so that everybody's getting judged by the same standards for the emissions reductions. which if you've ever done emissions reductions calculations, you know often they're an estimate multiplied by an average and given a little rounding.
I'll just say I really like the idea that the grantees will come and present in front of the commission. I think that's a great way for us to see what's happening and be able to tell those stories too to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So that being said, it's a great opportunity for all of you to participate in the process. So like Sarah mentioned, we are looking for 2 volunteers to serve on that scoring committee.
I would like to volunteer. This is Gade. Yep.
Shetty here, go ahead. I actually have a question on the timeline of what the timeline is for.
So the applications go live March 1st and will be due on April 1st. So we will be looking to convene the committee and assign scores hopefully somewhere in the first 2 weeks of April.
There are other members of city staff who sit on that committee as well. So we have some, you may recall Sarah Walls from an earlier presentation. She sits in, so we've got a transportation planner perspective. Who else do we have on that committee?
In the past, we've had Doug Black representing sort of a buildings perspective.
We just found out Doug's moving into another position today. We're all a little heartbroken.
And new for this year, we do plan on inviting Jane Welch to bring a waste perspective as well.
It's okay if you want to.
Can't do it in April.
I will volunteer, but I don't want to step on any. But if someone else is really excited, please do.
I would too. Are we limited to 2 people?
I don't know.
It gets tricky when we get a lot of different folks because you've got to align all the schedules to get together. But I would say
We should favor Zach. This is a great way for you to get involved.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
And then, I don't know, if I can come, maybe I'll come.
I was going to suggest maybe listing the 3 of you, and once we look at schedules, if someone's schedule looks more flexible or has more availability during the grant period, we can maybe assign an alternate.
That works. We just want to make sure the big thing is if there's ends up a need for 2 meetings, which sometimes there has in the past, we have to make sure that the same people are there for both meetings to ensure consistency. But we're excited to have them come in and present on their projects too. We think this is going to increase accountability and also just be a great way for you guys to hear what's going on. So cool. So even if you aren't on the committee, and you should not let this hold you back from volunteering to be on the committee, you will still get to hear about these projects. Cool. Thanks to our volunteers.
Visioning?
Yeah. So next up, you may recall, we've been working on visioning indicators of success. I know, Zach, you've done a really good job of going back over old minutes, so I think you're fairly well up to speed on this process. Where we thought we would pick back up today is because we've had a bit of a gap between, December we had a short meeting, January we didn't have a meeting, and now here we are, February, resuming the discussion, is the one angle we haven't really looked at is equity. And certainly we've had a lot of discussions in the commission about centering equity on our work and thinking, I will say within the office, we talk a lot about shifting how we talk about our climate actions to say, in recognition of the fact that there are so many different climate actions we can be undertaking, like we want, instead of saying we want to look for activities that reduce emissions that then have, equitable benefits, that we want to look for equitable actions that reduce emissions, really, to bring it to the heart of the work we do, right? And so we thought it would be a good idea as a way to revive the discussion to go back and think about the indicators of success that we've already generated and just give a little moment's thought to if we did this equitably, what would indicate our success? You know, as you're going through the community, how would you know that we had prioritized the needs of the most vulnerable residents in Iowa City, first and foremost, in our actions? And up till now, we've really been thinking long-term, you know, in 2050, what does it look like when we succeed? One of the great things about an equity lens is equity lives in the moment, right? And we haven't had a chance to talk about short-term, what are the indicators of success? And I think when we think about it from an equitable lens, that naturally brings the short-term more into view. So we wanted to give everybody a moment to scan through the climate action discussions and look at these items that we've already listed, and then maybe take a chance to put a couple stars next to ones that you think have particular intersections with equity. At the same time, ask yourself, are there equitable actions that aren't on this list that maybe should be? And then we'll discuss as a whole.
There is stuff on the back too, if you're looking at the page, so.
Thanks, Gabe. Does anyone have any thoughts they'd like to kick us off with?
I think I have a lot of thoughts, but I guess the first thing that pops up, this is Gade. I think especially when talking about electric vehicles, I do think about affordability, and I know that there are really affordable options, but it's more like the upkeep of that too, and especially I feel like there was I guess Johnson County got kind of a notice of, hey, we're no longer using our charging ports because you have to pay extra to get it configured the way that's it within the policy. You know more about this than I do, but it just seems like an extra barrier is put into place too. But I'm thinking more of households that, would like one but can't necessarily install that to charge it at home, or just paying for electricity to do that too. So I think more just lower socioeconomic status kind of comes to mind with how do we look at equitable options, I suppose, in that realm.
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is Johnson County had 2 parking meters in the parking lot for employees to use. As we know, the state of Iowa enacted regulation last year charging. You have to levy a tax for non-residential charging, right? And Johnson County's found it very difficult to put in the necessary upgrades to collect that tax at their charging stations, and so they've had to turn them off until they can figure out how to comply with the law. And so I think I'm hearing a couple things, and correct me if any of them are wrong. One of them is just access to charging, which is certainly something we've talked about in the past, that if you have to rely on public charging and can't charge at home, like that can become a barrier. But also the overall affordability of the upkeep of both the vehicles and the charging, and being able to support charging at home. Am I capturing it correctly?
Yeah, I think that captures it.
Okay.
Sure. Not to be anti-electric vehicles at all, but yes, just other considerations.
This is Shetty. I feel like the moment will come for electric vehicles, but the market situation and a lot of things have to come together before it is really an equitable idea for everyone to have an electric car. I do wonder if it's something that could be put into building codes for garages to have some sort of port already in existence. But I do think the next bullet on the list of smaller, more efficient vehicles, fewer cars overall, increased use of transportation alternatives is what we need now to increase equity.
Yeah, this is Harrelson. I highlighted that one as well, between the electric buses and increased use of transportation and equitable access to that transportation in the way the route planning is done. And I know there's a lot of work that goes into that, and that's always thought about, but just increase even more so, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Einen Lynch. I have a lot of them starred. As along with the access to alternative transportation, but even the first one, enhanced walking and bike paths. I did have a question about this. Speeds below 55 miles per hour. That seems extremely high for me, to be, for safety. So I was wondering if that was a typo or if that's intended.
It was something that came up in the discussions, but we have a bit of good news on that front. We actually don't have streets anywhere in Iowa City where you are allowed legally to drive at 55 miles per hour. So
I would think we would want a goal of like,
one objective achieved.
well, I want to change it to like 25 miles per hour. Like if we're talking about, really navigable streets that are safe for walking and biking, and protected bike paths. So anyway, I would move that to 25 miles per hour, and then I would start that one.
For the entire city or just in residential areas?
Certainly in residential areas, but I think it's worth looking at some of like where big roads go through very dense areas or areas where there's a lot of bike and kid travel. Mm-hmm. And then other ones I had starred are around like smaller homes built on smaller lots, using prefabricated building materials, ones around increased mixed-use development, like combining residential and commercial spaces, really making places walkable. I think that has an equity impact on the kinds of services that people can access. More green spaces, more trees, that we know that makes an impact on heat islands. I'm trying not to say all of mine because I can talk for a long time, so I will, I have more start, but I will leave it over for others to speak as well.
This is Sturdivant. I don't know how much of you could probably tie equity into it, but the reduced light pollution from streetlights along with more green areas, how do we plant trees and make them green without, you know, how do you keep people safe walking along the street if the trees block out the lights, but you need the trees to,
Oh,
you know,
interesting.
it's,
I was thinking
because
of,
like you know, the streetlights are in the trees, and I mean, even the city comes through and chops them around power lines and stuff, but
I
how do you
assumed you
keep
were
people
talking
safe?
about there's also health impacts to being around light all the time, and not having darkness at night has negative health impacts. So I thought that's where you were going.
No,
So
I'm
it's like
going-
two sides of
well,
that.
But I mean, yeah, downtown you know, obviously have the issues, but you know, and I have 2 streetlights on my street, and it's like there's areas that's complete black, and so how do you mix the trees in with keeping people safe? I don't know how much of an equity issue that is, but it could be something that's, you know,
This is
lighted
Murray.
walkways or something.
No, I was just going to say in terms of the street lights, so Mid-American Energy puts in most of the street lights around the city, and they put them, though, where the city of Iowa City requests them. And we had complaints that they weren't illuminating sidewalks, and we're told by the city that actually the street lights are for traffic. They don't have anything in their code about illuminating for walking. So I just thought that was interesting, so I thought I'd share it.
Thank you for that, because, yeah, that, I
Yeah.
mean, I get, you know, for traffic, but at the same time,
Right.
if it's completely black, you know, if you take out the
Yeah.
streetlight, how do you keep people safe from walking into traffic? So,
Yeah.
I would be so mad if they put a street light on my street. It's interesting. It's so dark, I love it.
Give everybody a headlamp so that
Yeah, this is Smith. I also highlighted some of the ones that have already been discussed about active transportation options, being able to have walking and biking transit options. 15-minute cities, I think a lot of us attended that workshop on Friday. And so, and equity was discussed quite a bit in regards to that concept. And so, one of the things I think about too with data collection and making, well, like protected bike lanes. I think that they're like a really great thing, and I would love protected bike lanes. And then by putting protected bike lanes in certain communities, thinking about equity as we do that is a really important thing to be thinking about. I'll just leave it at that.
Could you talk a bit more about that, Angie? What you're thinking about in terms of being mindful of where we're putting protected bike lanes?
I think it's a really, it's a complex concept, actually, that is something that I think quite a bit about. So I think certainly making sure that we are talking to all of our residents when we're like, I would love it if we had protected bike lanes, if we have meetings, and the only people that show up certainly surveys a certain demographic, and then we're missing out on other demographics. So making sure that we're getting input from all citizens of Iowa City. Recently, I've been doing some more reading too, though, on equity, and protected bike lanes are things that people want. And so then if there's a protected bike lane that comes into a community, then is that like contributing to gentrification and those sorts of things as well? So lots of variables to be thinking about. But I know that we are a socially conscious community, and so we do a pretty good job about thinking about equity already. But lots of things to think about. It's a complex topic.
Just to kind of clarify, this is sort of it. Are you saying like, hey, we put one here versus somewhere that may need it more, like prioritizing areas that may not need it as much, but people show up to the meetings, and so we need it here, but you kind of don't.
So I think that is one of the things, right? Like making sure that we survey residents who could maybe benefit from it more.
I just, like, that's what I thought you were saying, but I just wanted to.
But then I think on the flip side too, when we build protected bike lanes into underserved neighborhoods, then that becomes an appealing neighborhood that then becomes gentrified. I don't know.
Yeah,
It is
I
really a
get it.
complex thing that I think we could sit here and talk about at great length. But I'm a big fan of protected bike lanes, and I wish we had one, or two, or several.
This is Gade. Something that kind of came up, and this would be more of like how you communicate, but just translating education or information into other languages too, so that we can reach diverse populations.
So this is Grim. I actually liked the more energy efficient homes, although there's a real danger in focusing too much on future homes. I think there's real issues out there with the existing homes that need to be addressed. But what I like about this is it addresses the future as well as the past by kind of elevating that topic. I also like the idea of increased mixed use development, and that kind of mixes in with that new homes and really solves, in my mind, some long-term issues, whereas you don't need as much infrastructure as far as transportation in that if you have everything relatively close, walkability in that. And I think both of those can speak to equity, especially older homes or smaller homes with new families in that, as well as like a mixed development, like downtown, and being able to just walk to the store and whatnot. So those are my two top topics.
Is there anything that seems to be missing from the list? If we think about equity.
This is Harrelson. I might jump in again because as I've been watching the videos from the past few months, because I have been doing that, and my husband has been making fun of me for just sitting and watching climate action meetings. But one of the things, and I'll kind of tie it into the increased solar adoption and diversified energy resources, but one of the things that I would have added to the list too would be distributed energy production and storage, right, throughout the city, and having an eye towards equitable application of those resources and making sure that all levels of income and housing have access to not just solar, but also battery storage and any other type of distributed energy production type of things. And that's, thinking long-term, right? 2050 still, but.
I think what you might be getting at, Zach, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of the discussions we've had about prioritizing enabling people to shelter in place rather than saying, disadvantaged members of the community need to go and sleep in a gym while others can stay at home. Like making sure everybody has the resources to stay in their home if that's where they want to be in an emergency.
Yeah, absolutely.
It says greater regional collaboration. What region are you looking at?
It's your list. What region would you like us to be looking at?
That's my question.
So this is Fraser. I bring something up I either appropriately or inappropriately brought up before. I'm concerned that we still, even though we're focusing on equity, we may force a certain socioeconomic group to move to another side of the railroad tracks, those that don't want to share their cars and their bicycles, those that don't want smaller houses, those that don't want mixed commercial and housing. And I don't have the answer to that, because the only answer that I can think of is legislate them, make it mandatory that they share their bicycle, and we can't do that. It's not appropriate. So I think we're resolving a lot of issues with these, and at the same time, we're not going to end up with this homogeneous ideal world, because there'll be a number of people who have the resources to go off and own their big cars and their big houses and on the hill on the other side of the tracks. And maybe I shouldn't worry about that. It does concern me, though, because every town's got a wrong side of the tracks. And I'd hate to do something that ended up with unintended consequences of gentrification, whatever you want to call it. Well, I'm moving out of here. I'm not sharing my garden with anyone. Mm-hmm. I'm going to build a $20 million house with a 5-acre garden and put a fence around it and electrify it. Mm-hmm. Keep everyone away. And I'm going to keep my Mercedes, and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe we don't worry about that. Mm-hmm. But I think this perfect world where with this ideal homogeneous fairyland, and I don't mean to be cynical, I believe in this. And I think there's a risk that will drive some people away, and maybe we don't care.
You know, one thing that I think about when I think about this particular issue, and thank you so much for bringing it up, is that often when we, and I mean not just we in this room, but big we writ large, think about equity, we often approach it in terms of these are the things we want, and we want to make sure that you all, whoever the you all are, get them as well, and that's equitable, right? And I think maybe an important reframing in the climate context, it begins with recognizing that a lot of our most vulnerable households are already low-carbon households because they don't necessarily have the resources to lead a high-carbon lifestyle, to have a huge house and a big gas-guzzling car and to travel out of town for work, right? And quite possibly another way to frame up the way we think about equity, instead of saying we want these things and we want you to have them too, is to say you're already doing a lot of these things that we would like to be doing. How can we learn from you and build our community around some of the things you're already doing to be more in step with the low carbon life that you are leading? And thank you for those efforts. I don't know. I sometimes find it a useful way to think about it, but like everything, it has limits, right? Interesting. Well, thank you so much for the generosity of your thoughts and time. Where we're going to go next with this, and this is something to really think about as you take this discussion home, is in our next meeting, we'd like everybody to identify what you think the top 3 priorities are in terms of, as we think about metrics in particular, and thinking about this discussion we've had regarding equity and all these other indicators. We'll begin the discussion by asking everybody to read out what you think, like, what are the things we should be measuring, right? And then we'll try to offer up some suggestions about, which is to say, we'll invite you to offer up some suggestions about ways we might be measuring those things. And then the staff will take it back and we'll take a look at what data exists, what data do we think we could get, what data might be more difficult, and we'll come back and start drafting a memo together on recommendations. We'll let you know what our recommendations would be, and then you can take us to task and say, work harder, or what have you. Does that sound like a good plan of attack?
Can we pick more than 3? There's so many good ones on here.
Well, the idea is if everybody picks 3, you're not all going to pick the same 3, right?
I was thinking more in terms of 5 or something like that, yeah.
And they don't have to be the ones that we settle on ultimately, but we just kind of want to see, you know, how they distribute. I think that'll be helpful for us, because ultimately the other thing to keep in mind, and we're certainly very mindful of this, is we'd love to get data on all these things, right? But There's this aphorism in the business community that you can have something be cheap, fast, or good, pick two, right? And that applies to data as well. Like, we can get you inexpensive data quickly. It's not going to be good data. We can get you good data inexpensively. It's going to take time, or whatever the third configuration is. I'm not smart enough to keep track of my own three things. And so one of the things we want to do is figure out, like, where can we put our best efforts so we're getting good information to help guide our decisions, but not siphoning off a whole bunch of time into collecting those metrics instead of delivering services to the community, which is ultimately what I think we're all here to do, right? So thank you for helping us drill down on that. That's very useful. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for.
Yes.
We can look silently at each other. Our annual ritual.
Yes, it is now time to nominate a chair and vice chair for this year. As I have said before, I think being a chair is a great opportunity to get to dive in a little deeper on some issues with Sarah every month, and a great stepping stone to maybe future leadership, like building our leadership capacity, maybe a future run for city council. So I highly encourage it, but it's not a lot of time or a lot of pressure.
It's an extra hour a month.
An extra hour a month.
And we can do it on the phone or Zoom.
Good for your resume.
Would anyone care to nominate someone or volunteer to serve as chair?
This is Sturtevant. I volunteer as chair.
I was also going to nominate Jamie Gade for chair. Sorry, someone else told me ahead of time that they were out of the running, so. I didn't give you a heads up, though.
Was that you that's out of the running?
She's going to kill me, but Brenda Shetty for chair. She's already told me she doesn't want to do it. I told her it'd be good for her resume, and it only takes an hour a month, which I just learned. I didn't realize that, and I was the previous chair.
Well, I do, this is Shetty. I would like to say that the appointment of being on this commission has been really gratifying and fulfilling, and I find a lot from it as a citizen of Iowa City. But because I'm here as a representative of the University of Iowa and I can't really make decisions for the University of Iowa, I sort of feel a little conflicted about being a chair for a commission of this sort.
That's a new excuse.
Just so you know, you have no authority in this position.
Well, now everyone knows how I feel. And I would also like to nominate, I think that Gabe and Jamie would be great. I'd like to nominate Ben Grimm also, because I've been here for about a year and I've seen a lot from him too.
I liked Shetty's excuse. Working for the school district. I'm actually chairing 4 or 5 other committees, so I'd just rather not, just because of workload. So
That's the proof that you're the right guy.
yeah,
Want to get done right, get a busy guy.
I appreciate the nomination.
I can't help you out with this one. You literally have to do this one yourselves.
Well, I would accept the nomination, but if I'm open to other folks too. Honestly, I would like to nominate Michael because you do such a great job too. So, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will not accept, not because I wouldn't do it, but because I do think it's important to spread out leadership.
I
But thank you.
understand.
As a- Procedurally, how do we do this?
Well, you got to, yeah, you can, so you could move for one person to serve as chair and the other as vice chair. I will say historically, part of the thinking has been with past commissions, this isn't in the bylaws, I want to make very clear that it's not something you have to adhere to, but past commissions, and John, correct me if I'm wrong about this, part of the vision has been that the vice chair, in a way, is sort of a way of moving into the chair position, like you get a chance to back up and try it and learn the ropes and then move into that position the following year. So one way you could do this would be to follow that process and move that Gabe assume the chair and Jamie become vice chair. You can break a pool cue in the middle of the room and let them fight it out themselves. Also not in the bylaws. Probably not a joke I should make.
How much pool do you play?
Yeah. You could ask each member to talk a little about why they want to be chair, or qualifications, or more about why you think. What you need to do is nominate one person, have some discussion, and then vote on it. Then nominate another person, have some discussion, and then vote on it, if we go to Robert's Rules of Order.
I would be comfortable being the other nominee. Gabe has done a fantastic job as vice chair, and I would just rather decline the nomination for chair and then move Gabe to chair and then do nominations for vice chair.
So as the next steps, is that just a movement?
Yeah, someone moves, someone seconds. You ask for any discussion. If there is none, then you vote.
I'll move for Gabe to take over as chair.
I can second that. Smith, second.
Any discussion? And Gabe, would you like to say why you want to be chair?
I really, it doesn't bother me either way. I enjoy my time as co-chair. I learn so much doing, just even filling in occasionally and talking with Sarah. So I have no preference either way, whatever you guys decide.
Well, that's great. That's because you're Midwestern and you're nice. But why do you want it? Like, why do you want to be chair?
Resume? I don't know. I don't like public speaking, so I think maybe that might be a good way to get out there. Public speaking, talk in front of 9 people every once in a while. That's the only excuse I can come up with, so.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I know. W. Gabe Sturdivant, our next chair. And nominations for vice chair. I'll just go ahead and nominate Jamie.
This is Murray, I'll second. Oh, were you making a movement? I'm still not quite clear on that. Maybe I didn't need to second the nomination, but.
I guess for procedure, I will say that was just a nomination, and then there people can nominate others.
Okay. Withdraw my second.
Such an awkward thing.
Any other nominations?
At least we don't have a secretary position,
Yeah. All right, I will make it an official motion.
This is Murray, now I will second.
Any discussion? Jamie, would you like to tell us why you would be interested in vice chair?
Yeah, I think I've learned a lot sitting on this commission for a year, and I feel more confident in asking questions. There are certain things I just don't know a lot about, more than ins and outs of that your background is. But I have a passion for people in the community too, and I know this work is so important, and investing in this work is so important that will pay off for everybody for years to come. And so, yeah, I feel very passionate about this, and excited to learn more too, especially as co-chair, and happy to help in any way capacity as I can do as co-chair.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thanks.
Jamie Gade, new vice chair.
Congratulations to you both.
Thank you. Yep. Gabe and Gade. Good duo.
If you notice during roll call, sometimes I call out when you, because it just,
Yeah.
Where are we? Oh, public correspondence. We had some.
Yeah, this is unusual. So we've received 2 emails with specific requests to pass them on to the Climate Action Commission. This has not come up before in the past, so I'll just run you through procedurally how this works. They were included in the agenda packet for you to review. You can, at this point, we need someone to move to accept correspondence so that it's formally entered into the record. Just like we just had, after someone moves and seconds to accept it, we can have some discussion of the correspondence. You don't have to. After, whether you discuss it or not, or whether you choose to discuss it or not, it's entirely up to you. From that discussion, you can ask to put specific things on the agenda in the future, or just note that you thought it was interesting to have received this, however you'd like to proceed, and then, and then it gets entered into after a vote. So it's move, second, any discussion, and then a vote to accept the correspondence.
So we vote twice, accepting and then,
Well, you vote once, so you get a move, a second, discussion, and then you vote to accept it.
Okay.
And then if there's any action stemming from it, which I will say is unusual, but if there's action stemming from it, then you could also say, have a vote, like, we also move to add this item to the agenda, or actually, yeah, let's vote on it to be safe. But as I'm saying these words out loud, I'm realizing we add things to the agenda all the time without voting on it, so we're probably okay either way. I'll just note it in future action items like we
I
normally
just want to
do.
make sure it doesn't, like, it's not like the public addressing us and that, somebody coming in. Like, it's a completely separate kind of, okay.
Right. We're just moving at this point to accept it. Sorry if that was muddled. I spent a lot of time in the clerk's office asking about this one because it's not come up before, so.
This is Shetty. I move to accept the correspondence.
This is Sturdivant, second.
Discussion? Just as the 2 correspondences, one was from Representative Newman Munson asking us to consider pushing our bike infrastructure further and maybe pushing towards a gold level standard in the friendly bike community framework. And the second one was asking us to help advocate in the Procter & Gamble rezoning, help advocate or help citizens know what to do who are concerned about that rezoning. So any discussion?
Well, I did, sorry. When I saw the email with discussion about bike infrastructure, and obviously it also included, and I'm not sure how many people have looked at the bike master plan of Iowa City, and the steps needed to move from silver to gold. one of the first steps is protected bike lanes, but I wondered if there's a few of us who are new-ish members, and you mentioned Sarah Walls has been to previous meetings, but I don't know if it's been a long time, but my proposal would be to have Sarah come and address us and talk about the bike master plan. Is there a discussion of updating the bike master plan? What are the things that she's working on to move from silver to gold? Are there things that we can do to help support her? So that would be how I would respond to that email. Is I'd love to have Sarah address us about the current bike master plan.
I'm absolutely happy to arrange for that, if others would like that as well. Actually, this is how all our conversations are going to sync up, because I touched in with Sarah about this, and apparently the report card aside, she touched in with them because we do apply for gold level status each year. And the pinch point on this one, this is actually an example of why we need to be thoughtful about data, is the one thing that's currently disqualifying us is that to achieve gold standard, you have to have a certain ratio of bike lane miles to the number of miles in your town that allow speeds of 55 or higher. And as you learned in this meeting, we don't have any streets that allow for 55 miles per hour. And so the math on that, 0 divided by anything is 0. And so by this one metric, we're disqualified when one could argue by virtue of having a community where there are no streets that allow 55 mile per hour speed limits, we are more bike friendly than communities where you can drive that fast. So it's very interesting. And she has other interesting things to say about it. If you'd like, I can certainly invite her. I think to get an update on the bike master plan is a wonderful idea.
Yeah, just are we updating the bike master plan? Is there a work, an idea to update it too? I didn't know. Yeah.
What's the highest speed limit, 45 for Iowa streets?
I believe so. Don't you have feelings about that? I do. I have feelings about how we're failing on a metric that is really just a math problem.
My feeling is that we're not failing, the metric is failing.
So, all right.
Any other discussion on those two emails?
On this is Harrelson. On the second email, I resonate with Anne Marie's feelings. I was curious what we can do. I don't know what interaction there ever is between the different commissions in the city or anything like that.
I did ask the city manager's office about this one as well. There's not a lot officially that this commission can do, in part because it's listed as a zoning issue, and there is a planning and zoning commission that it goes before. The thought is that I think it's important to express empathy, and thank you so much for doing that. The thought is that if city council feels that there's something that the commission could offer above and beyond what the planning and zoning board is, because they have that background in zoning, that the city commission could request that the Climate Action Commission offer some advice on it. But I think there's a hesitation to call upon you to be experts in an area that you're not experts in, if that makes sense. And so possible ways forward would be to enter it into the record to recognize that it's been received. You could ask staff if we've received other correspondence from this individual or how the city might be, following up on it. To that end, I can tell you that other city staff departments have received it, and that the planning and zoning folks are following up with this particular community member. If you felt like it was important to invite them in so you could express empathy in person, you're certainly able to do that, and we could reach out and see. Or we being you, could say, you're satisfied with where it is at the moment and can wait, to hear if the city council would like your specific opinions on this. Otherwise, we can just enter it into the record and recognize that it was received.
This is Einan Lynch. I'm curious about our role as a Climate Action Commission. Like, we do not have the expertise, say, of the Planning and Zoning Commission, knowing the specific reasons for certain zoning categories and why we might change a zone. In this case, we're talking about moving a property that is currently zoned public to industrial. But I do think we have a role in pushing on issues that maybe aren't noticed by existing commissions or procedures. Like, are there issues here, or do we have the data around what this email is talking about, toxic smells in the air? Do we as a city have that data and know if there are pollutants coming from existing industrial over there? Because I think that, like, if a citizen's lived experience is saying, I know I am having negative effects from these pollutants, and if we as, like, a city kind of say, like, well, but we're just looking at the zoning rules, I think we're, like, missing something, and I don't know whose role that is to kind of pick that up and say, hey, let's look into this.
So there are two issues here. One's the zoning issue, and the other is the air quality issue. And the zoning issue falls under the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The air quality issue is, and this sounds kind of funny, it's an environmental issue. It's not necessarily a climate issue. And it falls to the purview of the Department of Natural Resources, who tracks air quality data for the state of Iowa and is in communication with the state about it. And so you're the commission, and you get to decide how you'd like to interact with this. But I do want to encourage some caution that we're not wading into an area that does fall outside of both the stated mission of the commission and also just the expertise we have in the room, right? Which is to say, I think we all sympathize very deeply with this particular position. Do any of us, can we speak to it beyond sympathy? That gets a little murky, right? And I don't, in saying that, want to downplay the role of empathy or sympathy, right? But I think in this particular instance, it's important to be mindful of our function in this particular commission specific to its relation to the climate action goals, as opposed to sort of larger issues that we all know and care about. And I know that's really uncomfortable for a lot of us. I just want to recognize that, like myself included. I think this is a really delicate question, right? I hope that's useful guidance. Do you have, I'm certainly open to other questions you might have or further discussion or.
I was going to say, yeah, you got to be sympathetic to the individual, but this doesn't paint the whole picture of what's actually going on, right? And there's going to be other discussions within the cities, within zoning, within, like Sarah said, the DNR and stuff. And there's no guarantees that them buying land necessarily means that it's going to be industrial as far as factory. It could end up being office building space. And with that, there's different sets of rules, and that's really what those other governing bodies as well, the city, kind of evaluates and dictates. So I don't think this is a commission, Climate Action Commission responsibility or area that we should be really kind of diving into, simply because we don't know the bigger picture to everything that's actually going on, nor do we have the expertise to kind of balance all those other things out. So just my 2 thoughts.
You know, it strikes me we are going to have a representative of Procter & Gamble come and visit to talk about their environmental footprint. Certainly, one thing the commission could do is say, we received this letter for a citizen and we were wondering if you could speak to it, just so we have a better grasp of what they would have to say to it. Yeah.
And of course, on our original committee, we had a member of Procter & Gamble. My sense, this is Fraser, my sense is we're the court of last hope. I think the people that wrote this, the author or authors, have probably gone to the well already and are coming to us because they haven't been successful in their other efforts. And I don't want to be cynical about it. But when I read that, I said, danger, danger, danger. And I'm not surprised by your more proper term, delicate. Mm-hmm. We're advisory not to either of those commissions. We're advisory to the city council. Mm-hmm. And so we're advising the city council to override DNR and planning and zoning. And not that it wouldn't be appropriate in certain situations. You don't want to be a chicken your whole life. You want to step up when it's appropriate. But I don't see the evidence that would back us stepping up, and that's just what you indicated.
This is Sturtevant. That's kind of my question too. Is what can we do? How can we respond? Is kind of.
So you. I'm not going to say again, we could, the first option, because I've said it a million times and I don't want to you to feel like I'm saying that's the only option. You could elect to have you could ask us to invite people to come and speak. That could be the DNR, it could be whoever. You could, if the commission wanted to act on it, you could form a subcommittee to get more information and report back to the commission, and then see if the commission wanted to take an official position on it or provide some sort of advisory memo. One of the obvious difficulties with that, of course, is that, this matter will probably be settled before you have a chance to put that memo together. And then the other is, of course, the danger of potentially speaking out of what you're called to speak on. Or you can say, you could send staff back to ask, to make it clear. We could enter it into the minutes that should the city council want you to take up this and offer a position on it, that you would be willing to do so. We've done that with other items in the past, that we've had it in the minutes or had a formal memo that, yeah, if you want us to look more into this, we're happy to, but we're letting you take the lead on asking what kind of expertise you want weighing in on this. If you have other ideas, you could bring them forward, and I can tell you whether or not I think we could do that.
Fraser, again, it's a little cold-blooded, and you'd want to clean up the language, but we should tell them the facts that we we feel your pain. We have some concern about your concerns. And we've looked at our directives, and it's not our role. In fact, the two organizations you need to deal with are Planning and Zoning and DNR. And we wish you the best of luck. Just tell them it's not our role, and we feel their pain.
Would you like staff to formally follow up with this individual and convey that message?
I love to pass things off to staff.
Are we able to still accept it into the minutes, saying like, hey, we at least recognize that you've seen it, now let's, because I don't want to get into some, like everybody else probably, like we shouldn't be talking about something that we aren't supposed to be, so.
So are you asking, can we just,
Like, can we put it in the minutes and say, hey, we looked at this is how we want to address this? So
Yeah, we could
at
enter
least
in-
admit that, hey, we read it and we understand what the person said.
yeah, and we can take a close look at the minutes in the next meeting to make sure that we've worded it to your satisfaction. But we could say something to the effect that the commission discussed the second letter, expressed sincere sympathy for the situation, inquired about what possible actions might be, and at this time are electing to wait for City Council to ask for further information, and are willing to give that should Council ask for it, and leave that as the minute item.
Punting it without punting it, really? I mean, that's kind of what we can do.
Okay. It's a hard one. Is that where we want to leave it with the minutes? All right.
Yeah,
So-
I think
So we'll enter it into the minutes. And then we just need to take a vote on accepting the correspondence.
So we've already had the motion and the second to accept these two bits of correspondence into the record. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And then we decided we don't need to vote on the agenda item to get the bike master plan update.
Yeah, I've noted it down. We'll invite Sarah Walls. We'll include it in our action items from the last meeting next time. Cool.
All right. Recap?
Oh.
I can say the confirmation of the next meeting is here, March 4th, 3:30 to 5 p.m. And then any action items you've recorded down?
I've got two action items. One is to invite Tyler Baird to come and talk about the city's tree planting strategy, and another is to invite Sarah Walls to discuss the bike master plan. Given that we also are inviting someone from P&G, is there any one of those that you feel is more timely than the other? Should we stick with the plan of trying to have P&G at the next one and then look to Sarah and then Tyler, or Tyler then Sarah? Or we've already established, I can't remember lists of three, so does anybody have a preferred order? No?
P&G, Sarah, Tyler.
Okay. All right.
So the P&G rep will not be here at the next meeting, or will be here at the next meeting?
We're hoping to get them at the next, we were hoping to have them at this meeting, but we just couldn't get it all to align, so we'll aim for March. And if we can't get them at March, then we'll bump Sarah up.
So they'll be, they won't be exposed to the minutes, or will they?
The Procter & Gamble rep?
We'll just ask for an approval of the minutes. We're not going to rehash them, so
Right.
that would,
I mean, you can, when we go to approve them, you could call out that specific item, or,
not I.
I just want to say,
but I
like,
don't think it's a, oh, go ahead.
I think it's important that we can talk about, we maybe aren't the officials who are going to make some decision about what should happen with P&G, but we should be able to talk about and consider as a citizen board the implications of, the health impacts or potential health impacts, or be able to ask or talk about the data, or if there is data, for example. I don't think we're like overstepping by talking about that. We're not making any proclamations. Okay. Just want to say that.
My concern is, has been stated now a couple times, the appropriate commissions are 2 other commissions, not us. And yeah, we can have conversations, but I don't know if it's appropriate. If they want to bring them up, I think we can have a discussion. I don't know that we should bring it up. Maybe I'm just old and beaten up.
I think maybe we're disagreeing about what it is we're talking about. We can talk about it later. Okay, we have all the action items? Mm-hmm. Then it is time to adjourn, if one of you should so move.
I can move to Smith to adjourn.
Grimm, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'll just note that we're adjourning at 5:15.
Thank you all for staying a little later this evening. And welcome again, Zach.
Thanks.